Good morning, Travis. It's a great
Good
pleasure
morning,
and
Eustace.
honor to have you with us this morning. And first of all, the reason why I particularly want you is that I see many young fathers who are confused and shamed and struggling with themselves. They need someone like you, a father who has been through the fire, uh, who has a standing in the community. And therefore, I want everybody to know that you have been the legal advisor for many years for J.P. Morgan, which is no small accomplishment, and you have also run the Autism Task Force for UJA here in New York. And I know what a hard job that is because I'm on that committee and I've watched you. You have a son who's on the spectrum, and as I understand it, he's your oldest son, and he's now in college. Can you fill us in a little bit about that?
Sure. My son Jeffrey is 22, and he attends Pace University, and he is hoping to finish college next year. And he's a psychology major. He is diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and it has been a very exciting, but I will also say very challenging journey for him and for me. I stopped working at my job when he started to go to college, in part to be more around for him. My wife kept working, and it's really been the latest adventure in a long series of adventures as my family has pursued this journey of coping with autism.
Well, when you use the word, and coping is a good word, uh, so where does character play in? Why are some people, particularly young fathers, having real struggle with a sense of honor that they feel is they no longer have? And the problem is it isolates them. It doesn't help them move forward. Uh, how do we help them to move forward? Because I understand their need to tell their story, but we have to get to the next move. And one of the pieces of the puzzle that I meant to bring up at the beginning, and maybe this is a good time to bring it up, and that is that we look at the puzzle piece of autism in isolation. We are not looking at the pieces that fit in around it, and they are, of course, in the beginning, the family, and the dad piece is a major part of that. But
Well, I certainly,
what?
yes, I agree with you that autism is a family challenge, not just an individual challenge. And of course, dads are included in that. And, I think that everyone's story is unique to themselves. But there are, I think, some coping strategies and behavioral traits that can be very helpful to families and particularly dads who have a child on the spectrum.
Well, yes, I think essentially what you're speaking of is guidance. And yes, it seems to me that's the big step. But into that comes the question of risk and trust. Who are you going to trust to guide you? I think of Temple, who's much older than your son. She will turn 67 this summer. And it was
Wow.
therefore 65 years ago, gracious, it's hard to believe it's that long ago, that I took her first to the Judge Baker Guidance Clinic at Children's Hospital in Boston. And she was at that time severely autistic. She uh, couldn't make eye contact, couldn't play peekaboo, uh, was mute. She didn't make any sounds at all, even. And she preferred to play with her spit, she would spit and go into these gales of crazy laughter. And then she would pull her feces out of her diapers and play with that. She was isolated, and I knew something was very wrong. But one of the things that drew me to Children's Hospital in Boston was the name of that clinic. And it is called that to this day, the Judge Baker Guidance Clinic. And I figured there had to be a Judge Baker who was seeing these children in court when they got into court trouble. And in those days, the expression was stubborn child, and pretty dismissive. And he
Right.
must have financed a clinic that would help these children before he had to deal with them in court. And I checked with the doctor last week. I said, am I right about that? And he said, yes, I think that's exactly what the story was. So that was my first move in trusting. How does one make that first move? Who do you pick
Well, I don't
to
think I
trust?
did it. Yeah, I don't think that I did it particularly well. I recall very vividly. It was a teacher of Jeffrey's in nursery school who first noticed certain behaviors and traits that suggested that we get some more help. And I remember, like electricity, when the word autism was used by that teacher, and I was furious. I was just so ready to reject this and to think it was an outrageous imposition, that she would interject a comment like that. And of course, she was right. I wasn't ready to hear it, and it took a number of visits to people with very fancy degrees after their names for me to even begin to accept that idea. Of course, it was 20 years ago for me, but even 20 years ago, the state of the science was not where it is today, and the vocabulary that we had to communicate about these issues was also not as developed as it is today. And finally, I think American society was not as educated. It still has a long way to go, but it was such a foreign idea when Jeffrey had his diagnosis that you used the word isolation. It was very difficult to find the words and to be able to explain to my family and to our friends and people that we knew exactly what was going on. And it took me a long time to sort of figure out what I was dealing with, what we were dealing with. So I think the first thing that has to happen is to get a diagnosis and to come to terms with that, because your whole world is just completely turned around when you get that information. And nobody comes prepackaged with a understanding of what do you do next and what do you do after that, and you have to learn this whole other area of knowledge that most people have never really had any exposure to before. So part of the challenge in the beginning for us was really just getting to the right experts and reading and learning about the disorder as much as I could, and also being a little worried about what I was going to find out as I learned more about it. It gets easier. It's never easy, but it certainly gets easier. And I think as you become more familiar with 10,000 things, but just learning what works for your child is a big piece of it, and it gives parents back some control over their lives.
I like that you say what works for your child, because what uh, the Judge Baker Guidance Clinic advised was for Temple speech lessons, and I don't know how the doctor landed on that. but he was absolutely correct, and he told me who to go to. So there was some kind of very primitive network. And Temple went to a Mrs. Reynolds in Belmont, Massachusetts, and she had a little nursery school in her basement where she taught children who had trouble speaking. And it was the key to getting Temple to join us. Before that, she couldn't join us. Uh, for one thing, I think she wanted to talk, and as everybody knows, she has stopped talking ever since. And, uh, but more crucial, Mrs. Reynolds made her learn to sit and wait her turn where the other children were there, that they too had a problem with speech, and she would have to wait. It was her first connection to somebody outside of herself. And yes, like you, I was very young. I didn't really know what I was doing. And Temple's father could never get through denial. I think that's one of the reasons I do so much today to help young fathers so that they will not be stuck as he was stuck. Uh, it was never a happy solution. Uh, what I would also say about getting these children to reach out and understand that other people have thoughts in their mind and other people have needs. I think always of a game I've seen played at other schools where the children all sit in a circle and everybody has to raise their hand at the same time. And that means you have to do it in teamwork with the person, each child on each side of you. That too was part of Temple's early education. And it gave me a sense of hope uh, and of trust that
Right.
somehow I would find the guidance through here. Because it's a double journey. I think that's what I'm struggling to say. It's a journey both for your child and for you.
Sure. Well, maybe coming back to the dad piece for a minute. Um, Most families, certainly the dad is an important breadwinner, maybe not the only breadwinner, but I think that I was very lucky in my career in that I had very understanding bosses and a very supportive group of colleagues at my office. And one of the things that you learn as a parent of a child on the spectrum is that stuff comes up, disasters happen. When I say disasters, I mean minor disasters, but things that require your intervention. And I think that some dads, and I was certainly one of those dads, feel very torn between doing things at work and attending to the needs of their child and finding the right balance for that. And I think that our whole society has come a long way, even during the course of my working career. But I think that to the extent that you have a supportive workplace that can allow you to make those maneuvers when you need to make them, can really take some of the stress out. But one of the big stressors, for sure, of having a child on the spectrum, in my view, is this tension of having responsibilities at work and then not knowing when suddenly you're going to be needed in an important way to your child.
Yeah, you're touching on all the problems that are most difficult. Uh, the unpredictability of it. I too was lucky in that the community where we lived accepted Temple. And when she finally did learn to talk, the little country day school in the community took Temple in. And it was a simpler school than it is now. Uh, and the neighborhood was simpler. And I think we were joined together by the fact that we were the ones who spawned the baby boom. Uh, it was right after World War II, and we were so grateful that the men were back, and we all began our lives anew. And there was in the neighborhood there was a closeness because we were all bearing children and helping to educate children, each other's children. And there was a kind of a rule around the neighborhood that any mother could lean out the window or any father and say, I'm going to tell your mother if they felt some child was out of line. And that was a big help. Temple understood that she would have to obey what was going on in the community. And she knew that when her mother said that to her, she better shape up. And again, I look back with gratitude of the way in which Temple was included in the neighborhood. And the other thing that occurred to me is, Travis, you told me that you go in the summer to Nantucket. We went for many years to the vineyard for the summer, and there was a very close community as well, and Temple was included in that. And was that true in Nantucket? Is that true? Do you have a group?
It is true, and I think that having people living around you that understand your child at least to some degree and are supportive of the tantrums that will happen, particularly when your children are younger, and sort of the differences in behavior that can seem very off-putting to someone that doesn't know anything about autism, to feel that welcome is a huge advantage if you can find it. And I think part of life's challenge for every family with a child on the spectrum is to forge those networks and to make their community a supportive one for them. It's not always easy, but I think that it really helps again with all the things that come up. I know everyone talks about this paradigm, but it so resonates to me is, what do you do when your child acts up in the supermarket? And what about that disapproving stare from the lady behind you who's never seen or met an autistic child? Now, in some ways, we're getting to a point where everyone has seen an autistic child, and it's not a brand new experience for most people. So I think in some ways the world has learned a little bit more about what families like mine go through, and so that happens less than it used to, but it still happens, and when it does, it can be very stressful. I think we were talking an earlier time about being on airplanes and the particular tensions of being all bound together in an aluminum tube, sort of, and the rules that airlines have about, behavior. Sometimes autistic children can't comply with those rules, and that again is a very stressful situation.
Well, this points to the need for industry to understand. Uh, I couldn't sympathize more with you about airlines because I fly all the time and am conscious of exactly what you're talking about. But markets need to know this. All the places where we move publicly, and I think the law needs to know. Uh, this crap, we're not done with stubborn child. Uh, Children are still being brought into court. And always when I read something about it in the paper, I think somebody should have helped earlier on. What was happening that was negative? And what I'm thinking of right now is, what do you do when you're faced with authority, and it can be medical authority, and you don't agree with them, and you think, I am not going to accept this. Have you ever been in that position?
I have, and I think that this gets to a really tough judgment call that I think every parent in my position or faces, which is when do you decide that the moment is timely for a strategic retreat and we can address the larger issues later? And when do you decide that now is the time to press a particular issue? And I always look at the lens through what's best for my child at the moment. And if it's better for me to tell off the lady behind me who is giving us an unfriendly stare because of something that Jeffrey has said or done, I might do that, but probably I'm going to just let it pass or try to get through the moment and then work on how we can avoid that exact situation. Of course, there's thousands of situations, so it's a tough call.
Travis, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about why you started the Ability Dream organization, if that would be okay, Eustacia, since that's kind of something that parents tend to do.
Oh, well, thank you for mentioning it. Ability Dream is just getting off the ground. It is an organization dedicated to training and to some degree employment, but it's really training for employment or through employment in a retail dollar store setting. What a number of parents noticed was that while there are some programs that try to fit autistic young adults into corporate and other employment settings, we also need to look at creating the demand for that type of employment ourselves. And what Ability Dream, through its Ability Dollar Store, which we hope to open our first of later this summer, partners with job coaching agencies and basically trains and employs adults with autism to work a variety of positions in a dollar plus type store. We're looking at a site in Connecticut right now, which I think we're becoming confident we can open. And we have a website, as you mentioned. It's abilitydollar.com if anybody wants to look at it and learn more about the organization. It wouldn't be right for someone like my son, but I think that for a variety of individuals on the spectrum, this could be a wonderful entree into learning the codes of behavior and performance that are required in the workplace. And it's a very exciting idea that I think is going to come about later this summer.
So Travis, is it a dollar store? I mean, is that what it's based on, or what is the store?
It's a dollar plus pop-up store plus, these are mostly discounted, lower cost items of, interest with some creativity in the merchandising that will get people in for a quick visit or to pick up a roll of paper towel or to, get an interesting toy. During most of the holidays, we hope to have, seasonal items that will make our store interesting throughout the year.
Okay, so it's just a sort of a little discount store that you're using as a training place.
Well, it's hopefully the first of several. The idea is to create a model for other stores that basically has a community room as an integrated part of the store with an ability for individuals to observe how the job is performed and then to go out onto the floor and actually interact with customers and to provide the stocking and all of the services that are required for a retail store.
So why did you do this, Travis, since your son wouldn't need it? I'm sorry, Eustacia, I just wanted to finish. One last question. Why did you decide to do this as a dad?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Why did you want to do this? Your son didn't need this. So.
Well, I think I do lots of things that are not always just geared for my son. I think that the issue spectrum disorder is a social issue that affects all of us, and we should all care about making the challenges less, increasing everyone's awareness of the issue, and creating a more tolerant society, but also a more productive society. And one of the goals of Ability Dream is to create a self-sustaining commercial venture, not for profit. If we ever achieve profitability, we'll hire more people or we'll open another store. So it's a disruptive model, if you want to talk about it in those terms, that will basically take the retail concept and make it a platform for exposing the surrounding community to the contributions that autistic people can make, and also a platform for training autistic people to become productive workers. So that's why I was interested in getting involved.
And one more question, then I will get out of the way. Eustacia, I wanted to know, how much support did your son need in college?
He belongs to a program at college where he has an academic coach that he meets with several times a week, that basically, I think, helps with what you'd call the executive functioning piece of learning, where if you have 3 term papers that are due over a couple of months, and you have some final exams that you need to study for, and you also have some, shorter term reading and homework assignments, keeping track of all that can be particularly difficult for people with Asperger's syndrome, for example. That's not their strength. Their strength, as it is with my son, could be in writing or in actually performing the coursework, and he's been a very good student, but I think that the academic coach is there to sort of keep some structure as he goes through his week. But interestingly, he's needed that coach, less and less as he's gone through school. He's going to be finishing his 4th year, so it will take him 5 years to get through college. But it's been a really good experience for him.
What 2 things occur to me as you're talking. First of all, I think what you're doing is marvelous and much needed, and it also needs to extend perhaps to certain kinds of service. You speak of the fact that the air flights are not aware of how to help handle a child on the spectrum in a plane. I look around the airport and I see innumerable jobs that these young people could do that require an absolute consistency, which a lot of these kids can do. They have wonderful memories, they have logic, and their obsession would be to do the job absolutely correctly. And I watch planes being brought in to the little landing gear, the walkway that we go on, and how carefully somebody is beckoning that plane in and telling them exactly when to stop. I know a lot of young men on the spectrum that would be very good at that, and they would never miss. It would mean everything to be exact. We have not been exploring, or nobody has been yet willing to explore, what kinds of possibilities are available in service jobs such as that. That's the one that I think of at the top of the list. What I also wanted to add to what you said about it taking your son a little longer in college, it took Temple 6 years to do 4 years of high school. And she went to a high school for teenagers with autism. And it had a farm attached to it, and that's where her interest in horses, it was horses then that she cared most about, and then it became cows. But it's where she began her focus on farm animals. And we do not need to hold children to an absolutely rigid time frame. It may be true of a lot of children. They're not quite ready to do that. And it worked fine for her to take that extra time. And it did mean when she went to college, she was just 2 years more mature. You speak of your son being able to do more and more assignments without his assistant helping him. That comes
Right.
with years of growing up. Probably true for all
Absolutely,
children.
and maybe this is the most important thing I'll say in this discussion. Um, I have seen, as I think you mentioned earlier, uh, personal growth and development in my son. At every stage, he did something more than I ever thought he would be able to do, and it has never stopped. And he's 22 now, and what he's doing this year is so much more than he could do last year and the year before that. And so I had grave doubts that he could handle, going to college and the coursework and all the other things that are involved in being a college student. And of course, he proved me wrong at every turn. And I think that, it's important to realize that human beings just keep developing and growing. And that means we have to give them opportunities to do that, which sort of takes us into a whole other discussion of risk-taking and, when do you let someone take the training wheels off and ride their own bicycle? And you can use
Yes.
that metaphor for every phase
For
of life
anything.
and every situation. It's very hard for parents, and the more you love a child, the harder it is to take those training wheels off. But it's so I've discovered that the risks are worthwhile. I will certainly always be very, very careful and study the risks for a long time before I take them. But at the end of the day, taking the risks has paid great dividend and has allowed my child to grow into the young man that he is today.
So we're getting down to the last 15 minutes here of our talking, and I wanted to ask each one of you, Eustacia, how do you feel fathers need to be involved from a mother's perspective? And then we're going to flip it over to Travis and see if he can tell us what we can, say to young fathers of today. Because Eustacia, you are out there talking to a lot of young fathers.
Well, I wish that I saw more of them. I talk at a convention and there'll be 400 people, and if I'm lucky, there'll be 4 men, and 2 of them will be teachers. How do we pull those men in? And I think it's going to take men like Travis to pull them in. Once they begin to see that a man in the community that they admire is stepping forward. And Travis, you used the expression, let me see, I have to look, I wrote it down because I liked it so much. You said you must have the freedom to talk about it. And you said that it took you quite a long while to allow yourself that freedom. I think that's exactly where these young men are stuck. And the other, it doesn't seem to, you and I also talked about the fact that we were lucky in terms of the circumstances of our life, that we were surrounded by a certain amount of privilege in terms of financial ease, education, educated neighborhoods that we lived in, and how much all of that contributes. But I've seen dads, I'm thinking of one in particular, a blue-collar dad, where nothing was that easy for him at all. And he stepped right forward and he said, "Oh, you got to get the captain of the bowling team to help." And he stepped right out and did exactly that. And it comes with, as you said, Travis, the freedom to talk about it.
Right. Well, first of all, I would say I've met some spectacular dads in my personal journey, and certainly not all of them had tremendous financial resources by any means, but And in fact, some of the ones that were the most challenged financially were the most unbelievably resourceful people, and just did amazing things for their kids or kids, and also did just fine at their professional jobs. So I've been lucky to meet some people who really showed me some great sort of personal strength that they had and techniques for being a good father of an autistic child, which is a real gift if you can find those people. I do think that autism forces an entire family into a non-traditional set of roles, because things are just not going to be the way most families are. Get over it, get used to it, move on. That said, I think it's very hard for a lot of dads to get with that program and to step out of some of the traditional roles that dads have and to do a little bit more nurturing sometimes, or maybe it's more discipline some other times, or whatever the deal is. It's not going to be the same as a lot of your neighbors down the street in terms of the types of activities that you engage in with your child, or the way that you'll be spending your time will be different and look different and feel different from a lot of other families. And it's important not to let that become isolating. And one of the ways that you can fight that isolation is by getting comfortable, and it's not easy, but getting comfortable with talking about it with people you know, and maybe even harder, people you don't know, and letting that be an okay area for people to talk to you about, maybe ask you a question. And some people will ask unintentionally offensive questions or dumb questions. The challenge is not to make them feel that way, and to make sure that they walk away from the conversation knowing a little bit more about the condition and a little bit more about how that affects your life and how you approach things. I found that, even having this conversation is very helpful to me, because it just feels more natural to be able to, talk about an issue that's very important to me and I know to you, and to let other people know that it's important also.
So, Travis, I have a question about your relationship with your wife, and you don't have to get horribly personal, but did that change when your child had autism rather than just typically developing children?
No, it really didn't. I think it's sure going to be the case for every family that a lot of stress is introduced, and that's not good for any life. And so everyone has to find their own strategies for dealing with that stress. And some people can do that with lots of exercise, and some people can do that with lots of talking. And I really can't tell you what the secret sauce is, because I don't know it. But I don't think that there was no before and after. I know that for some families there is a before and after, and unfortunately sometimes the after is divorce. It just wasn't that way. I admire my spouse greatly, and I know I could not have done this journey without her. I hope she feels the same way. I think she does. But
I wondered if she would
really
answer the same way. Do you think she would answer the same way?
Well, fortunately, she's not here to say. I think she would actually answer it the same way. I think this whole road trip has sort of forced us to learn some things from each other that we might not have learned but for being faced with this diagnosis. But I think those were all mostly good things. That probably sounds like I'm sugarcoating it, and I don't think I am. But anyway, that's just been my personal experience, and I'm sure every single marriage and every single experience of raising a child on a spectrum is very different.
Well, Eustacia, you said you had to hide a lot of things when you were in
Yes,
that
I did.
situation.
And it's funny how that lingers on with me. Uh, it becomes very difficult. It was a long time before I could dare to speak out, but I did have uh, a very difficult passage with Temple's father. In truth, could never accept Temple's autism, and he tried to prove in the end, and it was in the era of Bettelheim, when women were accused, when the children were called infant schizophrenics who'd been driven mad by their cold mothers, and that it was all the mother's fault. And Temple's father went to work to try to prove that I was insane so that he could get custody of all four of our children and put Temple in an institution, which didn't make sense because at that time she was in this school where there was the farm, doing very well, and he sent her the Wall Street Journal. So why would he send her that if he thought she was really suitable to be institutionalized? I don't think he knew what he was doing, and it was, in the end, I think, his tragedy, his loss, because in the end, I had to leave, taking four children with me, and, of course, happiness. It's one of the reasons I am trying now to speak out, so that that will not happen. And I think you're right, Travis. People are understanding more, and it's less likely to happen today. And believe me, there will always be obtuse people and people who ask invasive questions. There's no way around that. That's just part of life.
And Eustacia, I'm assuming that some of these issues are in your book, A Thorn in My Pocket. So
yes, they are. They are. But what I'm trying to write about now that I feel ties into all of this is we have not looked at our role in autism. We have looked at the single piece of the puzzle. So I'm working now on a book on the social history of autism. What has been our reaction over the years? Because what happens is, as human creatures, we're used to responding to each other in a certain way, and we take it for granted. When that response isn't there, and the child we are looking at looks absolutely normal. If a child has cerebral palsy, we can see it, or if they're blind, we can see it. Now we have something that can't be seen. And as I've gone back and studied our history, I've seen that that's where the trouble comes with the community. They are totally confused by the child that looks like everybody else, but isn't like everybody else. So I felt that if I could throw a little light on that, we might all of us breathe more easily.
Travis, do you have anything to add to that? And if not, I wanted to know how involved will you be in your son's with autism life compared to your other children's life as they get older? What do you think? Will it be different, or will you?
It will definitely be different. Everything has been different. I don't know the answer to that question. I wish I could see into the future, but I certainly hope to be involved, and I think I'll be involved in positive ways. It's Jeffrey has surprised me at every birthday, so I really am loath to try to predict.
And your other children, are they in college or grown, or what are they doing?
They're younger, so I have a junior who will graduate from high school next year, so we're just getting ready for the whole college application process. And I have a sophomore at Lehigh University, so he's an economics major.
So
he's home for the summer, so I'll see him then.
I just think it's interesting because I know Eustacia fairly well, and I think that she probably has more contact with her with her other children on a regular basis than she does with Temple. Eustacia, do you think that's right, or?
Well, yes, and I agree with Travis. It's a little different. And the reason why is my other three children do live here in the neighborhood of New York and Connecticut. Temple does live in Colorado, and she is on the road almost nonstop. Uh, so we meet mainly when we're both talking at the same conference, and I do treasure that because then we can sit down and have dinner together and share things. But they're not quite the same things that I share with the other children.
Would you have ever imagined this 60 years ago, Eustacia?
No.
That you would be going to, what you do with Temple, is it?
No, I never foresaw that at all. No. And I'm grateful for it.
Well, we have a few minutes left. I was going to open it up to see if anybody had any questions. Ruth, do you have any questions to ask Eustacia or Travis at this point?
No, I have just really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
And Ruth has a lovely husband who is very involved in her daughter's life too. So I think that's pretty interesting. What do you think, Paul, your husband measures up to this high standard, Ruth?
I think for the most part he does. He takes a lot of things in stride. Getting the diagnosis of our daughter was a little difficult for us for about a week. And then we just kind of said, well, we can't send her back. We just need to dig in and do our best, and that's what we've done, and we just haven't looked back.
Well, if you do have any questions, now's the time to ask them, and if not, we could close it with some words of wisdom from both you and Travis if you'd like to do that. Travis, do you have anything to add to everything you've said today? What advice for young men?
I'm pretty talked out, but I'm going to let Eustacia close this out.
Okay, well, we do have a question. Eustacia, Vicki would like to know, what topics does Eustacia discuss with Temple to promote the relationship? That's very good. What do you talk about with Temple, Eustacia?
Oh, that's a good. Well, we often talk about what's coming up in the conference and share information that we both learned. One of the things that we've talked about a lot lately is what are the job possibilities for young people on the spectrum, and the fact that we have to start at this at a much younger age. And Temple has talked about the fact that she loved taking carpentry in in the little grades. This is kindergarten through 6th grade, I guess it was. She took carpentry, she took sewing, and she loved both of them, and has talked about this and said, why are we not teaching it now so that a lot of these kids who may not be able to do college, but they might be very good at being carpenters. And the same thing goes for simple electricity. Both of these, and plumbing, we cannot outsource these jobs, and they're needed. And the hardware stores here in New York City where I live all carry a little sign that will say local carpenter work. That means some carpenter here in the neighborhood has signed up to do whatever you'd like him to do. And as I sit here talking, I have my foot on a footstool that one of my children built, and my books are piled up in a bookcase that my son built. And Temple and I have talked a lot about that, and we both agree about that. And we feel that also responsibility has to be given to children. Travis, you spoke of when do you take off the training wheels? And both Temple and I have said to each other, yes, get them off. And she likes the fact that I trusted her at a very young age, because in first place, we lived in a close neighborhood where I knew she was safe on her bicycle. I don't know that that's possible today, but I trusted her with it. And she loves the fact that I trusted her to take care of her younger sister. And we've talked about that. They both want to go down to the village stores and buy candy with their allowance. And I said, your sister doesn't see as well as you do. She's nearsighted. She's younger. She's not quite that steady on a bike. Can you take care of her? And Temple said, yes, I will take care of her. Now, Temple couldn't have been more than 10 at that point. And it was the first time I took off double training wheels, both for Temple and both for her sister, and kept my fingers crossed, and they did fine. And Temple came back proudly saying, we left our bicycles behind the police station because nobody would steal a bicycle from behind the police station. And we talk about things like that. All those moments in childhood keep coming back, and we enjoy them again together.
And we have another question. You know, people have a lot of questions about Temple, so this is a little off topic, but a great question, because Temple has changed as she's aged, like all of us. Does she still use any of the calming techniques or things for sensory stimulation that she used as a child? Does she use any of those to keep herself kind of grounded?
I don't think so much. I don't think as much now. I know that she exercises and does push-ups every night to sleep, and I think they've replaced that. And I think also exhaustion plays a role. That calms one down when you're just plain tired and like to climb into bed.
Yeah. Well, and now she is involved in so many things. She probably is exhausted most of the time.
Yes. So that when the day comes to an end, she's pretty tired out.
Yeah.
And I think as a child, she did so many physically active things that she was also tired. She slept well. I think a lot of kids today spend a lot of time in front of the computer, and one of the reasons they have trouble sleeping is that they're not really tired. And I haven't got the answer to that except perhaps to ration time at the computer.
Well, and that sparked another question for me for Travis. Is Jeffrey involved in like family activities? Do you do things together like go camping or
camping?
Things
no,
that typical families
but that's
do.
just because right. But the answer is yes. We do lots of things together as a family, and we try to have at least one family vacation together every year. And lots of things. He's very involved with his younger brother, who's not that much younger, so they're pals, and it's the same gratification that any parent has for their neurotypical children. Love to see your kids getting along with each other, taking care of each other, supporting each other, and Jeffrey is certainly part of our family in that way, and he supports his siblings in many ways all the time, and vice versa, and it's great to see. So yeah, we do lots of activities together. I think my kids just took me to a really terrible movie about a week ago, all three of them actually. The movie was awful. The experience of going to the movies with them was terrific.
And Eustacia, there's a compliment for you here, Eustacia. This woman saw Temple speak last weekend here in Rochester, and you've raised an incredible woman. She homeschools her own child with Down syndrome, her son with an orthopedic impairment, and her daughter with Tourette syndrome and OCD.
Oh.
Temple's advice about using practical skills, training, jobs, and work others want really rings true in our household. So, and that's something you and Temple have had long discussions about, looking at
yes.
practical things that people can do. So you're talking to Temple, she's now spreading the word. So
yes,
that's
well,
great.
that's good to hear. Yes, and just to add about family, the connections, particularly Temple's connection to her sister. The other day she was in town. It was one of these terrible snowy days that we had, and I had a foot that I had injured. And I said, Temple, I cannot get through the snow to you to have breakfast with you. I'm so sorry, but I just cannot manage it. Well, Temple called her persistent and said, I'm here alone.
Oh, no.
Can we get together for lunch? And they got together and had lunch together. So they're nice connections, and I treasure them. Thank you very much, Travis. And you were great.
My pleasure.
You
Bye-bye.
means a lot.